Look around you. Every person you have ever passed on the street, every face in every crowd you have ever stood in, every human who has ever lived. All of us came from just a few thousand survivors. Because once, around 70,000 years ago, our entire species almost died out. Not in one region, everywhere, at once. Our ancestors were pushed so close to the edge that everyone alive today may descend from a tiny handful who barely held on. And you carry the proof of it. Take any two people on Earth, strangers who share no language, and line up their DNA. You would be astonished at how little separates them. Two chimpanzees from neighboring forests can carry more difference in their genes than two humans from opposite ends of the planet. For a species spread across every continent, we are eerily, almost impossibly alike. That sameness is a clue, and it points straight back to the moment we nearly ended. So what happened, around 70,000 years ago, that almost erased us? And why is the most famous answer also the most fiercely argued? To find out, go back. Picture the Earth around 70,000 years ago. Our species, modern humans, is still young and still small. There are no cities, no farms, no writing. Just scattered bands of people, a few dozen each, moving across the land in search of the next meal. These are not primitive creatures. They look like you. They have the same brain, the same clever hands, the same soft voices telling stories around the fire at night. But they are rare. Every band is an island, and between the islands lies a great deal of empty world. A species like that is powerful, but it is also fragile. It does not take much to snap one of those thin threads. A bad winter, a failed hunt, a sickness moving through a camp. And far away, on what is now the island of Sumatra, something enormous is quietly getting ready. Beneath what is now northern Sumatra, in Indonesia, a volcano had been filling for a very long time. Its name is Toba, and around 74,000 years ago, it did not simply erupt. It detonated, in one of the largest eruptions this planet has seen in 2 million years. It is hard to hold the size of it in your mind, so try a number. Toba threw out roughly 2,800 cubic kilometers of rock and ash, enough to bury an entire country meters deep, blasted out of the ground in a matter of days. What it left behind is a wound you can still see. The crater is now a lake, 100 kilometers long, the largest volcanic lake in the world. You could drop a small nation into it, and it is simply the empty socket left when the mountain hurled itself into the sky. And the ash did not stay in Sumatra. Winds carried it thousands of kilometers, out across the ocean and over the land. To this day, geologists digging in India, far from the volcano, still find a gray layer of Toba's ash pressed into the ground, sometimes meters thick. But the ash was not the thing that nearly finished us. The real danger was invisible, and it rose far higher, into the upper air, where it would do something terrible to the light of the sun. This is where the story turns dark, in every sense. When a volcano like Toba erupts, it flings sulphur high above the weather, above the clouds. There it spreads into a thin veil that wraps the whole planet, and that veil quietly turns away the sunlight before it can ever reach the ground below. The theory is that this veil plunged the world into what scientists call a volcanic winter. For years, perhaps 6, perhaps 10, the sky stayed dimmed. In some regions, temperatures may have fallen by as much as 10 degrees. A long gray cooling settled over the earth. Now leave the numbers behind and stand in it. Imagine you are one of those people. The sun that warmed every day of your life is now a pale smear behind a dirty sky. The days are cold. The plants you gather are wilting, then simply not growing back. The animals you hunt grow thin, then scarce, then gone, following the dying grass to nowhere. You walk further each day and come back with less. The children are hungry, and there is nothing in your hands to give them but the promise that tomorrow you will try again. Picture a small band gathered around a failing fire, under that ashen sky, fewer of them each season. The old do not last the cold. The weak do not last the hunger. Somewhere out in the dark, another band has already gone silent, and no one is left who will ever know. This is the winter that may have pressed our whole species against the wall. And when scientists went looking for just how close to the edge we came, they did not dig it out of the ground. They found it written inside us, inside every living person, including you. Your DNA is not only a blueprint for your body, it is a record. Because tiny changes build up in it over the generations, the genes of a whole species carry the faint echo of its past, of the times it was many and the times it was dangerously few. And when geneticists read that record in modern humans, they found something startling. A narrow point. A moment when the whole human population appears to have crashed, down to only a few thousand individuals able to have children. Some estimates put it as low as 3,000 breeding adults, others closer to 10,000. A species you could fit into a single small town. Sit with that for a moment. Not a few thousand in one valley. A few thousand in the entire world. Every other band, gone. The whole of humanity, the ancestors of everyone who would ever live, gathered into a group smaller than the crowd at a local football match. And that is the answer to the riddle we began with. That is why you and a stranger across the planet are so alike in your genes. We are also similar because we all came through the same tiny doorway. We are the children of the survivors, and there were not many of them. For a long time, one explanation for that doorway stood above all the others, and it had a name: the Toba catastrophe theory. It was put forward in the late 1990s by an archaeologist called Stanley Ambrose. His idea was beautifully simple. The volcano erupts, the winter falls, the bands starve and starve until only a scattered few are left clinging on in the warmest corners of Africa. The eruption and the bottleneck, cause and effect, locked together. It is a powerful story. It may even be true. But here is where honesty matters more than a tidy ending. Because over the last 20 years, that neat link between Toba and our near extinction has come under serious fire. And the more closely scientists look, the more the simple version starts to fall apart. Researchers went to places where ancient humans were living when Toba blew. Sites in South Africa and around Lake Malawi. If the volcanic winter had been the great killer, you would expect those camps to fall silent, the people to vanish. Instead, in several of them, people simply carried on. Newer climate models suggest the cooling, at least where most people actually lived, may have been far gentler than the grimmest estimates. In much of Africa and the southern half of the world, the Great Freeze the theory needs seems, on the evidence, to have been mild, or barely there at all. And there is the awkward matter of timing. When geneticists try to date that population crash, the numbers turn slippery. The bottleneck may have been a slow squeeze that lasted tens of thousands of years, tied to the long Ice Age climate, rather than one sudden blow from a single mountain. So where does that leave us? With two things that are true, and one uncertain bridge between them. The bottleneck is real. Our genes really do carry the mark of a time we were terribly few. That part is not in doubt. Toba is real too. The eruption absolutely happened, and it was a monster. What no one can yet prove is the line drawn between them. Whether the volcano truly brought us to our knees, or whether we were already few. And Toba was simply the loudest event in a long, hard age. And there is something almost fitting about that uncertainty. Because whatever the exact cause, the deeper truth does not change. Somewhere in the deep past, for some stretch of cold and hungry years, our entire kind was reduced to a fragile handful. Think about what that means. Stretch forward in time. Everything that was ever going to come next was inside those few thousand people. Every language not yet spoken, every song not yet sung, every city, every invention, every face that would ever be born, including yours. All of it, the entire human future, was carried in a few cold bands huddled around their fires, not knowing they were the last, not knowing they mattered, simply refusing to lie down and stop. They had no idea you were coming, and still they held on. So the next time you stand in a crowd, in a busy street or a packed train, and feel like just one forgettable face among millions, remember what those millions really are. Not a crowd, a comeback. Every single one of us grown back from almost nothing. You exist because a few thousand people, in the darkest winter our species has ever known, chose to see one more morning. Everyone who ever lived came through that narrow door. And somehow, against everything, so did you.